Hello and welcome to Riverfront Territory, a Cincinnati Reds podcast on the Foul Territory Network. I am Trent Rosecrans. I'm a longtime Reds beat writer, currently of The Athletic. And so I'm home from winter meetings back in lovely Cincinnati. A little snow, a little action there, but all good. And again, if you missed the last show, I do apologize. My co-host Danny Graves has been ill. I was at the winter meetings, which are kind of a just kind of you can't make really plans at the winter meetings because there's so much. How do I put this? Like, there's very little structure. So it used to be 4 days. They've cut it down to 3. Especially because there's less minor league stuff going on. So really, I guess I could put it out. I got in on Sunday. Okay, well, actually, hold on, and I'll do that in a second. But first, I'll just say that, the winter meetings are done. The Reds were outbid by Kyle Schwarber. We talked about that on the last episode and kind of broke that down. But this is a team that still has stuff to do. Nick Krall still has things he needs to do to check off his list, setting up next year's team. So that is ongoing. They put a lot of eggs in that Kyle Schwarber basket, and he chose to return home, or not home. Home would be the Cincinnati area. He chose to remain in Philadelphia, and in fairness, they offered him $25 million more than the Reds. And I don't know about you, but $25 million would be a lot for me. And probably for Kyle Schwarber as well, but less so for him. I mean, one day I would love to know the difference between having a $125 million contract and a $150 million contract. We've had our annual performance reviews, and I don't think I'm in danger of learning that anytime soon. I also work in journalism, not known for hefty paydays. And I would say $150 million is a pretty hefty payday. So, with all that said, kind of go in what the winter meetings were like. It used to be 4 days. And they've cut it down to 3. And a lot of that is because they've moved some of the other stuff to a different time. It used to be a lot of the minor league things going on as well. And you'd have the trade show, which was always my favorite. I loved going to the trade show. Basically, it was everything from bats and balls and gloves to hot dog machines and hot dog rollers and popcorn buckets. Lots of the giveaways that you see, you have samples of those. People with uniforms, doing those Star Wars night or whatever theme nights are, and you'll see a lot of these, or a bobblehead, a giveaway. My friend Shogo Akiyama here that I have. You will see different companies that produce those, either designers. So all sorts of stuff, and that's no longer part of the big league winter meetings, and it's kind of sad for me because I loved it. But it is kind of more focused, and we get out of there sooner. So that is good as well. We show up. I flew in Sunday. I was in New York for pleasure, for fun. Went to a couple concerts and 4 nights of music, so it was great. However, I got in a little delayed. If you remember last week, ahead of this week's big weather thing, there was a lot of weather in Florida. I got in, we were delayed 2 hours, and I was kind of salty about that until my friend Levi Weaver, who writes the excellent Wind-Up newsletter at The Athletic, the baseball newsletter, the Wind-Up, Levi had to fly in to Jacksonville. I think Gordon Whitmire and a bunch of other people coming from Chicago, and Levo was coming from Dallas, but a lot of people coming from Chicago were also diverted to Jacksonville. I know others who were diverted to Miami, and others who just kind of flew in circles for a while. So I got off lucky. But even with that, so really the next day, the first 2 days they have managers. It used to be spread out over 3 days. Now it is. You have two managers in a different room going at the same time. We sat there and we talked to Terry Francona, talked about Ellie De La Cruz. And one of the things that was talked about was it was Terry Francona saying he has to do a better job of making sure Ellie gets that rest. And that is a big thing. That is a really big thing because it's difficult because Ellie's a guy who wants to play every single day, and it's not best for him or the team, or the organization, because he takes a pounding, he plays hard, he's always doing those things, and that's tough. That's really tough. And so there's that. And he said some other things. I'm trying to remember, Friedel he likes. There are a couple other little things. How Kyle Schwarber would fit in, because this was before Kyle Schwarber made his decision on Tuesday. And Tito was among the first couple of guys in. And I actually, if you go back on Blue Sky, I had this. It was kind of funny because it's in a room this year. A lot of times it's in the same room as the media workroom. This time it was in a one right next door. And the one right next door, you're going in there, and on one corner is a table and a set of chairs around it, and then cameras behind it. Same on the other side. So when we're walking out, and they do it, I think it's every 30 minutes or 20 minutes, because Tito started at something 40 and ended at the top of the hour. And Matt Quintana, what is Quintana's first name? I'm blanking on the Royals manager's first name. But he is, everybody just calls him Q, so I always forget. So Q was sitting there talking, just started his media session, and as Terry Francona, as everybody calls Tito, so, on that. As Terry's walking out, he kind of looks over and he sees Q, who'd been on his staff and is one of his really good friends, and he just like, I don't think Q saw him, and he just from the back you hear, "Royals suck," and then he starts laughing and Q starts laughing. It's just kind of a fun thing that when you're around with Terry Francona, everybody knows him and pretty much everybody likes him, and it's it's interesting to watch. So we had that, and then there was also every day, used to be 3 times or 4 times. The beat writers for each team will go up to the executive suites. And where we were in Disney, I was actually staying in a hotel across the street. Everybody from the Athletic was, and then we kind of crossed the street. Not too bad. It was actually very good. This was in the I don't remember, Bonnet Creek resort thing around Disney. And so it was actually kind of nice that it was that close, but it was also a little bit further away, that you could get some separation. And so that happened. And then we go up, and the hotel we were at was the Cigna or something. And then it was attached to another one, the Waldorf Astoria. And the Reds, every team has a suite in the Waldorf that has like a bed, and a living room. And so the beat writers will go up there to each team's suite, and we just kind of chat for a little bit and ask questions. That's where that first day was still a lot of Kyle Schwarber questions. Second day was a lot of, Kyle Schwarber questions, but asking differently, because he had made his decision by then. And then the other managers went. Managers only there talk once, but the executives you talk to each day. And so the second day, there were a couple press conferences. I think that was when Jeff Kent had his press conference. to talk about getting in the Hall of Fame, and that was really fun to listen to. There was also, I think, some other ones that if it's not a team that you cover, you're not really paying attention. I think there's always this word of mouth too. That next day, the Scott Boras thing that he does every winter meetings, where everybody gets around him and asks these questions, and he has scripted answers for all of them. The one about Cody Bellinger, because he actually mentioned the Reds, and that was kind of surprising, because he threw the Reds in there in his Scott Boras way. Here's the exact quote: It's not for me to judge, but great players see red if they have a big bat yanked out of their lineup," the power agent said. "I haven't met a team that dodges a 5-tool player. To fill the center field need is a giant step towards the playoffs. North and South, outfielders that fly with power, they're rare birds. In the offseason, there's a lot of startup to organizations, and for that reason, there's a lot of angel investors that are looking for very versatile outfielders." Oh, just kind of brutal, but he was with the Yankees, so it's not for me to judge, but great players judge. See, like red, and then so that's one team name. Yanked, Yankees. Dodges, Dodgers. Giant step, Giants. North and South. I took that as both Chicago teams. Outfielders that fly with power, they're rare birds. That would be Orioles, Cardinals, Blue Jays. In the offseason, there's a lot of startup to organizations, and for that reason, there's a lot of Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim investors that are looking for very versatile outfielders. I have gone to those. Scott Boras has some Reds players now, but usually his free agent market is not, even though, the Reds have signed, let's see, Nick Martinez as free agent, is a Boras client. Mike Moustakas was a Boras client. I know Ellie De La Cruz currently is a Boras client, as is Tony Santillan. Matt McLain used to be with Boras, is not any longer. So he's, if you don't want to deal with Scott Boras and you're a Major League Baseball decision maker, POBO, President of Baseball Operations, or GM, or whatever they're being called these days, you know what? Scott Boras has really good players, so you're going to have to deal with him at some point. And I don't think there are really teams that say, "Hey, we're not going to deal with that guy," because, well, he has what they want. So there's that. That it was like 11 on Tuesday. There were more manager meetings. Then the news broke, and I think I had gotten a text at like 10 something saying, "Hey, Schwarber's going to sign with the Phillies, and we're going to be able to break this soon." I don't know who had it first. I wasn't paying attention to that. Everybody was going for the same thing, and Ken Rosenthal is going to get it at some point anyway, whether it's first or second, and it's rarely not first or second. So there was that, and then it became, okay, let's see how they pivot. And I was going to talk a little bit about that. Like, I put out a story mentioning some possible names to get offense. Cody Bellinger is one. I don't see that one happening. I just kind of out of the blue for me that he was mentioned, and I thought maybe he means Red Sox. I don't know. Not Reds, but who knows? Scott does. But Ryan O'Hearn, DH first base type, and our own Tim Britton. Tim Britton does such a fantastic job on these projections. He predicted, or his projections show. So what he does is he kind of takes all these numbers, has a little formula, and I'm not sure how he does it. Magic, I think. And comes up with a number. Like for Kyle Schwarber, his projection was 5 years, $145 million. Well, Schwarber got 5 years, $150 million. So Tim was off by $1 million a year. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So the things, when I say the projected salary, those are Tim Britton's, and I mean, I'm going to look forward to the scorecard that I want to have put out for him next year. I don't know if anybody else will, but I would really, really like to see kind of what his projections were and what they were. Ryan O'Hearn, 2 years, $36 million. I don't see Ryan O'Hearn. I see him as a pretty good player, but I just don't see him as taking up $18 million of the Reds payroll and then having to probably, this is what Nick Krall said, is like the budget's the budget. Back of the paper math, back of the envelope math, they have $5-ish million right now to play with. That just doesn't, seems rough. The Schwarber included deferrals. It included some other things. It could have been trades. Brady Singer is going to be, I think, the highest paid player on the team after arbitration, probably. So, maybe he's a year from free agency and you trade him and somebody will give you something else and you also they take on that salary. That said, this team really, I believe this front office really likes what Brady Singer brings and is not in any hurry to trade him. Marcell Ozuna is another guy I said. 1 year, $14 million. He's coming off a terrible season. But the year before, he was really high MVP candidate. Also has baggage and, is off-field legal issues. And this was workshopped wording, and to be on the safe side, I'm going to use the one that we at The Athletic and New York Times have really kind of settled on. Included 2021 arrest and MLB suspension under its domestic violence policy after an incident between him and his wife. Then he was arrested in August 2020 and charged with DUI. He reached a plea agreement on that one. So yeah, and there were no charges, I don't think, at the domestic abuse incident, or domestic violence, sorry. So that's a guy that has a red flag that I think makes it tougher. Now, 1 year, at 1 year, $14 million, there's a chance that works out. 2 years ago, he was unbelievable. And there's the thought of, I don't know, just like, if you go back to 2020, ahead of the 2020 season, we were debating Marcell Ozuna or Nick Castellanos, and the Reds got Castellanos. And the Braves went with Ozuna, and I think, Ozuna's had a better time since then, but last year was really rough, and how much of that is age, especially at age 38. Rhys Hoskins is another guy, 1 year, $10 million. That's more of a, if you find nothing else, I think. I just don't, I don't know if I'm taking a Rhys Hoskins bullet and making that as my keeping Sal Stewart off the from playing time, keeping him from playing time. The one I like here, and I'm not exactly sure how it would work, but we could go just DH on this. But our old friend Eugenio Suárez, and I've said this many times, that if you look back at the trade deadline, the three teams that were most linked to Eugenio Suárez were the Reds, Mariners, and Tigers. What all those three teams had in common were they've had a Eugenio Suárez before. He has played for those teams, and that goes a long way. There is always a question of fit, of who the guy is once they get in. So yeah, that's definitely it. That's a big, big part of it. So yeah, you would probably be a DH, but he loves Cincinnati. He loved playing here. His family loves it. He's comfortable. Maybe I'm being selfish for me that he's such a good dude in the clubhouse for players, teammates, media alike. I mean, you talk to any of his former teammates. I remember when he had his 4-homer game this year. I called up Scooter Gennett, who hit 4 homers for the Reds, and Suárez was his teammate then. And he just talked about how Gino was one of his favorite teammates ever. And you talk to anybody else, and they'll do the same. So maybe play some third, maybe some first, and DH, but mostly DH. There's 2 Japanese first basemen. I can't see Bob Castellini signing off on guys who aren't surefire guys at this point, and position players have not quite had the track record that Japanese pitchers have had coming over. So, Munetaka Murakami is really a big power hitter. The projection there is 8 years, $158.5 million. So the total outlay is more than the Kyle Schwarber, shorter per annual, but also deeper. And he is, did I say Marcelo Zuna was 38? He was ranked the 38th prospect on ours. Free agent target. So yeah. Sorry about that. Murakami is a guy who has big power, but, he kind of struggled last year with some injuries. And the same with Kazuma Akamoto, who is... Both those guys played third in Japan and are probably expected to play first here. He doesn't have quite the power of Murakami, but... pretty good player. That projection is 4 years, $78.5 million, so a little more affordable-ish. He's 29. Last year he was limited to 69 games because of injury, but still hit 15 homers in that period, which, not terrible. Especially, if joins a Reds team that was in 162 games, their leader had 22. So yeah. And then you get to platoon guys. Do you want a guy coming off the bench or DHing who can mash lefties and then somebody else or whatever? 2 of the guys, Miguel Andujar and Austin Hayes, were with here. Rob Refsnyder's a veteran who just hits left-handers really well. Always has, also a very good reputation as well. Both Andujar and Hayes fit in because they've fit in before. Left-handers, Max Kepler, I think, maybe just Winker, Mikey Skrimsky. Could be some trades. Ketel Marte would be interesting. That could cost you, I don't know, someone who threw it out to me, who was usually good at these things, was like, maybe Chase Burns and someone else gets that done. Ketel Marte is a heck of a player, but, you do have questions about what happened last year. There were talks about his teammates weren't happy with him. He's 32, so he's on the wrong side of 30. That said, he's owed $102 million over the next 6 years. That's pretty reasonable for a guy who's been as productive as Ketel Marte. So I could see that, and maybe he plays, I don't know what position you put him at. Maybe you put him a second, Matt McLean in center. Maybe DH him. I don't know, but he's a guy. Yandy Díaz, maybe. I would really like that. It depends on what you give up, of course, but he could be a free agent at the end of this year, but he does have a vesting option. He's 34. Probably just a DH, which is great. You can do that. And he had a slow start last year, but still had 25 home runs and hit 300. That's a productive player. Jake Myers is a center fielder with the Astros. He's a guy that, is a good plus defender. Last year got on base in his breakout season. Not a lot of power. I just don't see that. And then maybe they just stay where they are and hope guys make the leap. I don't think you can do that. You at least need a guy that can platoon somewhere and hit lefties. They need a lefty masher, or someone who mashes lefty, not a lefty who mashes. But they'll take that. So yeah, it just, that's the frustrating thing, I think, is when you're kind of putting it all together. Kyle Schwarber was the perfect fit, and they didn't pony up for it. So he'll be back in Philadelphia, and Pete Alonso then got signed by the Orioles. Didn't think Pete Alonso was really, I reported earlier that the Reds didn't even plan on meeting with him because they just knew it wasn't going to happen. And Schwarber was a guy who may pick the Reds if their offer were competitive. I don't know exactly where I'd put it on that scale, but I mean, it was serious, and I think they were going to have to do a lot more around that, but still interesting. So yeah, so where do they move from here? I don't know. We went up to, later that afternoon, went up to Nick Kral's suite, and he said, yeah, not sure yet. We're looking at all our options. And Nick's not a guy, the thing that I think people misunderstand is so many people are misleading around here and in this business and in this game and try to be vague. Nick's a pretty honest guy. If Nick says something, I'm pretty sure that is his belief. I've known him for 20 some years. He is someone who has shown time and again that he's not going to lie. Like the Hunter Green, like everybody wanted him to shoot that down. And, if the Dodgers said, hey, we really want Hunter Green, we'll just do contract. We'll eat all the extra money, but we'll give you Shohei and Mookie. He does that. But I don't think the Dodgers are doing that. Nobody else is. I just don't know that there's a deal out there to get what you could get for Hunter Green, or what Hunter Green's value is to the Reds if you could get that much in return. Maybe somebody doesn't like him, so they try to get him out, but I don't think that's a deal. And then that was that day. Most of round 5, 6, people go get dinner. It's tough where we were in Disney that there wasn't much around there, so you had to Uber, or if somebody had rented a car, they could do that. San Diego, where the winter meetings are scheduled to be next year, there could be a lockout, so there may not be winter meetings next year. But that is the ideal place because you can go into... It's close enough to just walk over to the Gaslamp District, plenty of restaurants and all that. This one was all convention hotel food, which is not great, honestly. And so lots of DoorDash this year. DoorDash was the move. I got Cava one day. I think I got Public Sub one day. I got pizza one day. It's just kind of what you have to do to eat. And then the Wednesday we have a manager breakfast, which is every year the manager, it used to be a lunch. Now it's a breakfast. Last year was at 9. Now it's at 8, which is really early because 6 on, most time a lot of people are just hanging out in the lobby drinking. I did not partake much this year. Just wasn't my scene this year. But then, so you have that, and then at the Rule 5 draft is Tuesday, or 2 o'clock. It was 2 o'clock, and it was pretty quick. Then we talked to Nick Krall again, and kind of as our wrap-up, and he was, I don't know, he was disappointed just because they didn't get anything done, and they missed out on their top target. They also had a player taken in the Rule 5 draft, a pitcher that they just signed, designated for assignment, had him go through waivers, and then was it picked in the Rule 5 draft. He wasn't protected. Couldn't have been protected because he was picked off waivers after that deadline. So that's the end of it. And I go back to the hotel room, try to get some sleep. But beyond that is that's where a lot of people go home. Like I know like Nick and Brad and even like Mark Sheldon and I think Gordon Whitmire all had like flights that evening and got out of town. At the Athletic, because there's so many of us and we're all over the country, what they do is anytime there's one of these all sport events, be it I think the NFL draft, or no, we do that at the Combine in Indy because they know it and all that. NBA, I think they do it at Summer League. NHL, they do it at the draft. And so the bigwigs from New York and elsewhere fly in, and some other people from the thing do that as opposed to flying all the baseball writers to New York. So it actually works out well. We had a little dinner with an open bar, which was nice. And then the next day we had meetings, and that ended around 3. And I got to go to Galaxy's Edge because I could. So yeah, that's pretty much the winter meetings, and then flew home on Friday. And again, Danny Graves is ill, so he was not able to join me this week, and I kind of pushed, and I apologize for all that. Yeah, please don't hold it against me. If you decide to rate and review, if you would subscribe to Riverfront Territory, which is part of the Foul Territory Network, and subscribe to Foul Territory while you're there. Great stuff by so many shows. Yeah, we would appreciate that. And then if you like it, leave a nice review. That would help some of us, and maybe me. Tell your friends that this podcast exists. And hopefully as we kind of get more on it, I can figure out our schedule and our timing more. Danny and I got to line all that up, and I texted with Emilio Pagan, and we're hoping to have Emilio next week as a guest, and I'm excited for that, just to have two closers back talking to each other. And I'll just kind of, I know this is hard to believe, but I might just shut up. Not something I've done before, but I'll try it out. So yeah, that's pretty much what we got today. Sorry you just have to look at me, but I try to have interesting stuff in the background, so you don't have to look at me. That would be great. Little Gunner Stockton action. So that's where we are. Please, if you can say nice things, review us, subscribe, all that stuff. And thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week. And Danny will be back, and I think everybody will be happy about that. Most of all me. So, thank you.